Community-based strategy. Community-based strategy has three elements, and we'll look into the first one, which requires the input from the community to be served and or the target population. And ANA wants to know how they were involved in the development of the project. So even though we do have this COVID situation we're dealing with, there are still ways to engage the community, and most of them involve online surveys or virtual focus groups. So these are just two suggestions. You could even include some past focus group meetings or maybe strategic planning meetings that were held pre-COVID. They would still have a decent shelf life for up to 3 to 5 years. So if you have those available, you're, by all means use those. But for those of you that need to go to the virtual platforms, the two suggestions we have that work well are online surveys and virtual focus groups. So online surveys are pretty much the gold standard. And here's just some tips to get some good responses and to give you good surveys. The first one is to avoid leading people to the answers you want. So you want to make sure that your wording is very specific, but you don't sway answers. They're very objective. They have very objective points. You want to formulate open-ended questions. You can use those Likert scales, the ones that said, on the scale of 1 to 5, where are you? The point is that you want to avoid simple yes or no answers. And again, be very precise with your wording, be objective, be consistent. You don't want to be leading people in any one direction. The next one is get higher return rates of the giveaway contest. I know that this works from experience in my community. So usually when we do a survey, we say fill out the application, and then in return you get a chance to enter your name into a door prize. So that works really well in our community. I think everybody pretty much has survey burnout. There's surveys all the time. We're inundated with survey questions. So you want to make sure either you're very clear on the purpose of your survey, and then you can engage people from the need or their interest in your survey, or you can go to see if a nice prize will get their attention. So anyways, you want to make sure that you have a really good return or a decent rate of return on your surveys. One thing that you want to avoid is, and we've seen them in many applications, is they say where they sent out like 1,000 surveys and they got like 35 response. So that is not a good return rate. So you want to do the most work on your end as the people putting on the survey. You want to get the best response possible. And how you can do that is definitely by using social media. Social media is great for adults and youth. You can insert links to surveys in Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, all those social media that your target group are using. Then if you want to do like a community-wide and get input from absolutely everybody in your community, you want to make sure that you tailor or you offer opportunities for people who aren't connected to social media. So particularly, this makes me think of elders in the community who, I can think of, elders, you don't typically think of using cell phones and Snapchat, but some of them are. But you want to make sure you are able to give those people that aren't connected their chance to give their input. So what you could do is, advertise in those venues that people usually see, like newsletters, those postcards, letting them know if you phone somebody, if you call somebody and making arrangements, you can do the survey over the phone instead of through, some web-based medium. You can offer to do it in person. Again, you just want to make sure you get the entire community and you target your approach specific to that target population you're trying to reach. And then another good faith thing to do is to share the survey results and the findings with the community. So if it's very easy to pop the results on your Facebook page or a website and let them know the response. It just makes people feel good that something they participated in, they found out the results on the community level. So the next one is virtual focus groups. You can do focus groups through Zoom or any other type of virtual meeting platform. It's not as easy, but it can be done. You invite community stakeholders and you make sure that they're representing those groups of people, and you make sure they know that you invited them to represent their particular group. And so you're getting up to 10 to 15, 20 people on your virtual focus group. You give them time to do intros, to build a rapport. I highly suggest using a facilitator when you're doing these focus groups, because there's always people that are very aggressive in putting forward their points of view, and there's people that tend to stay back. You still want the people who are quieter to give their input, and facilitators are trained on how to do that, get input from everybody. And one way they do that is by having some ground rules. You want to make sure that the ground rules are posted in the beginning, everybody agrees to them, and everybody knows how to abide by them. You want to provide ample time for discussion. You want to make sure that it's a very productive meeting. You don't want to make people feel rushed, or you don't want them to feel like their opinions are important. I would definitely suggest having a note taker, so somebody who's taking notes on all the decisions that are made, so that the proceeds from your focus group can be used for several years into the future. For example, say you're doing a focus group with elders and you got all their opinions, and then you can summarize the steps and all the priorities that were given, and you will be able to use that document for grant writing and planning purposes up to 3 to 5 years into the future. It saves effort on your part, definitely, but also, you have to be cognizant of the participants' time as well. It's usually not easy for them to give up their time to help you on your focus group. So using it the best way is, highly recommended. Okay, so for the next element, we're going to talk about addressing number 14, which is the target population and the community to be served. So you want to describe the community to be served by the project. You want to describe how the community to be served provided the feedback and input into the project development. So your community to be served, maybe you did the focus group. So you're going to describe the process that was used and who was involved. We did a virtual focus group. Who was involved? It was representatives. You don't have to name people by name if you don't want to. You could say the president of our elders group, the representative from our youth group was there, or somebody from government was there. So you don't have to use names. People can remain anonymous, but just give the readers an idea of the type of people who were on your focus group. So then from there, you attach that documentation into the appendix. So either you're doing meeting minutes or sign-in sheets or the summaries of the findings. And if you're using the survey, it's a good idea to include like a blank instrument of your survey, and then include the summary of the survey results. And if you're using like SurveyMonkey or even what's the one on Google, the Google Docs or Google Forms, they have nice summaries of surveys, and they put them in pie charts or in other kinds of charts, so it makes reviewing the feedback so much easier. So include those documentation into the appendix because it is specifically requested, and the evaluation criteria. So while we're mentioning defining community, it's a good thing to know the terms, to be very clear on the terminology that A&E uses. So there, as you may or may not know, you get to define your community as it pertains to your project and your application. Way back years ago when I was a reviewer for A&E, the community meant literally your entire tribe, especially like if you're on a tribal reservation. It meant to get input from everybody. Well, a certain amount of response from the community for your very specific project that you want to implement. Thankfully, A&A recognized that wasn't very practical, and now you get to define your community. So these are the terms you should be familiar with when writing your application. So the first one is the community to be served. There are some projects that are designed to benefit the entire community. When I think of these, I think of, like developing regulations or ordinances, especially like for ERE or for a SEDS project. So those government laws or those ordinances are designed for the entire community. So that would be your entire community to be served. And you would have to cast that wide net when you're getting community input. So if that's not the case, say you have a project, you want to do a youth project. So this would be, we'll give some examples for that. So the community to be served is the geographical or organizational community that benefits from the project. For example, it could be your tribal community. The next one is beneficiaries, which is a subset of your community to be served. And those are the individuals within the community that benefit from the project. For example, in a youth project, it could include definitely youth, it could include their parents, maybe youth workers or school administration. And the next one is target population. So this is, again, a subset of even beneficiaries. So this is a group that shares similar characteristics within the community that will be identified for recruitment as project participants. And so this would be an example, this would be youth, would be our target population. So when we're talking about evidence of community input, here's a nice chart to organize to give you some idea of what A&A is looking for. So if you want to include like the type of project you're doing, you include in your chart who was involved in maybe like your focus group. You would include those, the process that was used, if you're using surveys or youth committee meetings, and then the documentation to attach. So this would include blank survey, summary of a survey, and the minutes from the meeting or sign-in sheets. And then it would just apply to the information that A&A is looking for and the type of project that you're proposing. The next element is element 15, and it's highlighted in yellow. And the application clearly demonstrates that the applicant organization has a connection to the community to be served, including the ability to directly work with the project participants and beneficiaries. So the best way to address this element is to describe the working history of your organization and its ties to that community to be served. So if you're a tribal organization, you basically have that built right in being a tribe. So you have your community, you have your organization that's designed to provide services to your community. But what if you're a department within the tribe, and then you'd have to make that go further into that distinction of who your beneficiaries are, who your community to be served is, and describe those experiences you had working with them in past projects. So A&A would like a brief explanation on the successes and the challenges you had working with the group, and how did they go? How did the past experience go, and how did it prepare you with your proposed project? And the third element is the application clearly documents an ongoing outreach activity to maintain community awareness throughout the project's implementation. And this is really important because community outreach and having a communication strategy that's planned now and then implemented once your project starts is key, especially to get that community support from your project. You've already started by including them in your project design. Your community's been involved that way. Let's follow up with them. Once we get funded, we're going to make sure we keep them up to date on what's going on. We're going to let them know when the project was funded. We're going to give them regular updates, and we're going to definitely have a communication strategy to recruit volunteers or participants. You want to make sure this is all planned out now. So when you're describing your communication plan, let us know the kinds of information that you're sharing, the sectors of the community that you're targeting to receive the information, and how the information will be spread out and who's responsible for creating it and the time frames that you're going to do that outreach activity. So this is very easily transferred into a chart. And this could be a nice chart to use where you're planning out the entire communication plan for your project. So we start out with the message of an award announcement. The target population is community-wide. The media that we're using is press releases, radio, website, and newsletters. The project director is responsible for creating it. Communication teams responsible for getting it out. And then there's the timeline that it goes out. So you would do this throughout the entire duration of your project to maintain that transparency and to make sure that you're getting that community support for your project.